If this were some kind of storybook, I'd probably start by saying I thought my marriage was solid and that my wife's infidelity blindsided me. But the truth is, our marriage had been slipping downhill for a while. What really stunned me wasn't just the betrayal, it was realizing that my loving wife genuinely believed I'd roll over and accept her demands, letting her humiliate me. To me, it all boiled down to one thing: people mistaking kindness for weakness. Let me introduce myself and set the stage. My name's Mike Peterson, I'm 42 years old, and I've been married to Amy, who just turned 40. We've been together for 20 years and have a 19-year-old daughter, Jessica, who's a freshman in college. For the past few years, our marriage had been growing stale. Amy had become distant, and her interest in our relationship seemed to dwindle. Sure, we were still intimate, but even that was starting to fade. I think hitting 40 and the whole empty nest thing pushed Amy over the edge. Sadly, it was Jessica who stumbled across the first sign of what I can only describe as Amy's madness. Jessica was home for Christmas break, and on her last day before heading back to campus, she needed a computer. Mine was in use, so I told her to grab the old spare laptop in the closet. I hadn't touched it since Amy got a new computer for her birthday months earlier. About 30 minutes later, Jessica burst into my office, fuming. "Dad, what kind of kinky stuff are you into?" she demanded, shoving the laptop toward me. I stared at her, completely baffled. "What are you talking about?" "I mean all these adult videos you've been watching, and what's with all this, C***K holding nonsense," she snapped, opening an untitled folder full of videos. I scrolled through a few files, horrified by what I saw. "Jessica, I'm not into any of this stuff." She folded her arms, glaring at me. "Then how do you explain it being on your laptop? And don't try to tell me you don't know what this is." "I'm 19, Dad. I'm not a kid anymore." Still stunned, I shook my head. "Jess, this isn't my laptop. It's your mother's. She's the only one who's ever used it." Jessica's expression shifted from angry to curious. "What the hell, Dad? Are you serious?" We decided to dig deeper. The more we poked around, the more unsettling it got. We stumbled upon another folder filled with articles about manipulating your husband into submission. That's when it hit me, this wasn't just some recent discovery. These files dated back months. We had about an hour before Amy was due home, so I suggested we check her new computer. Jessica retrieved it while I powered down the old one. "It's password protected," she said, frustrated. "Don't worry," I told her, leading her to Amy's office in our bedroom. I opened a drawer under the desk. "Your mom isn't great at remembering passwords." I told her to write them all down and keep them handy. Inside, I found a piece of paper with passwords for our household accounts. Jessica frowned. "This doesn't include her computer password." "Hang on," I said, pulling out a second sheet hidden underneath the drawer. "This is her secret stash. She thinks she's clever hiding it here, but I spotted her doing it months ago. I never needed it, until now." I snapped a photo of the paper and slipped it back into its hiding spot. Within moments, we were logged into Amy's new computer. The rabbit hole went deeper than we thought. More videos, more articles, everything revolved around submission and C***K holding. But before we could uncover more, we heard the garage door opening. We scrambled to shut everything down and put it back exactly as we found it. That night, I felt like my world was spinning. The things we found were certainly shocking, but there was no clear proof that Amy was doing more than watching those videos. Jessica made me promise to keep her updated as she headed back to college, convinced her mother was hiding something bigger. I couldn't disagree. I'd noticed the same changes in Amy, her coldness, the way she seemed to pull away from me, and now it all felt like puzzle pieces falling into place. My investigation had only just begun. Karen's behavior toward Jessica had also shifted, but in a way that was completely different from how she treated me. I was clinging to the hope that her interest in adult videos was just a harmless curiosity, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. With work and everyday responsibilities piling up, it took me nearly a week to carve out enough alone time to investigate Karen's computers further. While combing through her browser history, I stumbled across something unexpected, a secret email account. On her so-called password sheet, most of the entries were vague, but there were just enough hints for me to figure out how to access the account. Lucky for me, Karen wasn't in the habit of deleting her emails. Most of the messages were exchanges with someone calling herself Madam B, Karen's self-proclaimed, submissive advisor. The emails revealed a lengthy string of conversations where Madam B encouraged Karen to transform me into a submissive husband. In her messages, Karen described me as someone who rarely argued and usually gave in to what she wanted. According to Madam B, this meant I must be a pushover, ripe for becoming a compliant and obedient spouse. At one point, Karen expressed concerns about what to do if I resisted. Madam B had a ready solution: threaten me with divorce. She assured Karen that I'd end up losing everything and be stuck living in a shoebox while shelling out money for her to enjoy with her lovers. This struck a nerve. I'd always known the odds weren't great for men in divorce, even when they'd done nothing wrong. Realizing how little I actually understood about the law, I decided to take action. I scheduled a meeting with Catherine Stone, one of the best divorce attorneys in the city. When I walked into her office, Mrs. Stone greeted me with a confident smile that instantly put me at ease. "Don't worry, Mike," she said with a smirk. "If you do end up living in a shoebox, it'll be a really nice one." She leaned forward, her tone firm. "People shouldn't rely on advice from non-lawyers who don't know what they're talking about. Here's the deal, your wife is in for a rude awakening if she tries to divorce you. I'm betting her so-called expert hasn't even considered your financial setup. Your wife's business is worth close to $1 million, but her liquid assets aren't even half of that. We'd immediately demand half the value of her company. She'd either have to pay you $500,000 or sell it." She continued, "As for alimony, her income will be calculated at the time we file, which is comparable to yours. That means no spousal maintenance. And here's something else to consider: your house is nearly paid off. A large home equity loan could be placed in a trust for Jessica's college expenses, effectively shielding that money from your wife's reach. Retirement accounts? Those will likely balance out, so no surprises there." I nodded, taking it all in. "What about filing on the grounds of adultery? Would that help?" Mrs. Stone shook her head. "It wouldn't change how assets are divided, but the evidence you're gathering could give us leverage. If her activities became public, it could harm her business, and that might push her toward a favorable settlement." She assured me she'd prepare the paperwork and wait for my go-ahead to serve Karen. Although we didn't yet have concrete evidence of adultery, the emails suggested she was heading in that direction. In the meantime, we could use the extra time to safeguard more assets. Later, I updated Jessica on everything I'd uncovered and shared what the lawyer had told me. "You really think Mom is planning to turn you into some kind of submissive husband?" she asked, her disbelief evident. "That cheating woman. Does she actually think you'd go along with something like that?" I sighed. "Honestly, Jess, it's partly my fault. I've spent years giving her whatever she wanted without pushing back. I need to put a stop to it now." Jessica tilted her head, considering something. "Or, maybe you shouldn't. Think about it, Dad. If you stand your ground, she'll just hide it better. What if you played along instead? Use it to draw her into a trap." Her suggestion caught me off guard. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. "You know, Jess, I like the way you think," I replied, a plan beginning to form. From that point on, I kept a close eye on Karen's secret email account. Madam B's advice grew increasingly manipulative. She instructed Karen to cut off intimacy with me, pile on more household chores, and generally adopt a harsher, more demanding attitude. Karen was supposed to monitor my reactions to her new behavior, testing how far she could push me. Little did she know, I was already one step ahead. Karen's next step, according to Madam B, was to promise me rewards of intimacy if I followed her instructions to the letter. Madam B told her to nitpick everything I did, always finding faults, and to withhold intimacy as punishment. My compliance would signal to her that I was ready to fully embrace the role of her submissive, wimp husband. Part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, but Madam B's emails revealed a backup plan if I resisted. Karen was instructed to secretly humiliate me instead. Remembering Jessica's advice, I decided to play along. I kept up the act, pretending to be a dutiful husband while seething inside. I obediently did what Karen asked, even exaggerating disappointment when she withheld intimacy, though, truth be told, I was so furious that I didn't even want her touch. Then came the email that pushed me over the edge. Karen informed Madam B that she had found her bull. The man was a salesman who worked for one of her business suppliers. Madam B encouraged her to sample the bull before initiating her plan with me. I had held on to the faint hope that Karen might snap out of this madness before crossing the line into adultery. That hope evaporated a week later when I read another email. Karen wrote to Madam B, "I've experienced my bull in every way. I'm ready to make my husband submit." Rage doesn't begin to describe what I felt as I read those words. Identifying the bull wasn't difficult. There were fresh emails from a Mark Rose thanking Karen for a great night together. The most recent email, dated just the day before, chilled me to my core. Mark wrote about how much he was looking forward to putting me in my place. He even mentioned being excited about humiliating me and, disturbingly, forcing me into a submissive role. With a bit of quick digging, I found all I needed to know about Mark Rose. If this was Karen's idea of an intimidating bull, it was laughable. Mark was 5 feet 10 inches and maybe 180 pounds, a good 10 years younger than me, sure, but no match for me physically. At 6 feet 2 inches and 200 pounds, I could take him on my worst day. Mark was married with 2 small kids, which made me feel a sliver of pity for the fallout his family was about to face. Over the next 2 weeks, I continued monitoring their emails. Mark even sent Karen a few explicit POV photos of them together, blissfully unaware that he'd handed me ironclad evidence of their affair. Not only had he confirmed Karen's adultery, but he'd also handed me the ammunition to destroy his own marriage. The final email came soon enough. Karen wrote to Madam B, "I'm ready. Friday night is the night. He's ready, and my bull is fully on board. I'll lay down the new rules, and if he resists, I'll use the divorce threat. I even have a special gift for him to put him in his place." Madam B reassured Karen that based on my compliance with her previous demeaning acts, I would fold without a fight. 3 days. That's how long I had to prepare. My lawyer, Catherine Stone, had already finalized the divorce papers. I also had Mark's wife's email and phone number at the ready. When I told Jessica about Karen's full plan, she was horrified but thrilled by the way I intended to handle things. She agreed to be on standby to help when the time came. On Friday evening, Karen was sitting at the kitchen table when I got home, looking a little more anxious than usual. I turned on the digital recorder I had hidden in my pocket as I approached her. "Michael, sit down. We need to talk," she said, her tone firm. I fought the urge to smirk. "Can I at least change first?" Her demeanor shifted into what I could only describe as her commanding voice. "No, you're going to sit down and listen. And you will not interrupt." I sat down, placing my briefcase by my side, and nodded for her to continue. Karen took a deep breath and started speaking, her voice carrying an air of forced authority. "We're going to make some changes around here, and you'll need to accept them. First, I'm going to be taking a lover. He's coming over tonight to be intimate with me. Your role will be limited to cleaning me up and preparing him to go again after he's finished with me. You'll continue doing all the house chores and whatever else I tell you to do. She paused for a moment, clearly expecting me to react. Instead, I calmly asked, "Is that all?" Karen's face tightened. "No, there's more. I have a little gift for you. You'll start wearing it immediately, and I'll be the only one with the key. Go ahead and open it." She slid a neatly wrapped box across the table. Inside, I found a chastity cage. I had seen similar ones in the videos on her computer. Holding it up, I locked eyes with her. "Are you finished?" Karen nodded, though she looked uneasy. "Yes. I know this is a big adjustment, but you'll adapt and follow my rules." Her confidence wavered as she continued. "And just so you know, there will be consequences if you don't comply." I couldn't help it, I let out a low chuckle. "Consequences? Let me guess. If I don't go along with your plan, you'll threaten to divorce me, take everything I've worked for, and leave me living in a shoebox. Is that about right?" Her voice trembled as she replied, "Well, yes. So you'd better just go along with it." Smirking, I pulled out my phone. Without breaking eye contact, I sent a pre-drafted email to Mark's wife. Then I dialed Jessica. "Yeah, honey," I said when she answered. She laid it all out. "You're not going to believe this, she even gave me a chastity cage." Karen's face twisted in panic. "Put the phone down. Who the hell are you talking to?" I raised a hand, signaling for silence, and added, "I'll have to call you back, sweetheart. Looks like I need to deal with this." Setting the phone on the table, I turned my attention to Karen and slammed my hand down hard, making the table rattle. "Never interrupt me when I'm talking to my daughter," I said, my tone calm but firm. Karen stood frozen, her mouth slightly open but no words coming out. "Good," I said, leaning back. "Now that I have your attention, let's go over what you just told me. If I understand correctly, your grand plan is to have some guy come over tonight to be intimate with you. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to watch and then serve as your faithful cuckold. Oh, and let's not forget this little gift." I held up the chastity cage. "You'll be the only one with the key. And if I refuse? You'll divorce me, strip me of everything I've earned, and leave me in a shoebox. Did I get all that right?" Karen straightened up, regaining a sliver of confidence. "Yes, that's exactly how it's going to be." I calmly reached for my briefcase, set it on the table, and opened it. "Karen, get your phone and call Mark." Her composure faltered. "What? Who's Mark?" I didn't wait for an answer. Snatching the phone from her hand, I unlocked it using her passcode, then tapped on Mark's contact and put the call on speaker. "Mark, you know, you're bull," I said, smirking. The line clicked, and Mark's voice came through loud and cocky. "Hey, baby. How did the wimp take it? Is he ready?" "Sorry, Mark," I said evenly, "this isn't baby. It's the wimp. I have a couple of questions for you. First, when you started this thing with my wife, did you bother to tell her you're married with 2 small kids? Judging by her face right now, I'm guessing you didn't. Second, did you let your wife know you'd be spending tonight with mine?" Again, from your silence, I'll take that as a no. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence hang for a moment before continuing. "Don't worry, Mark. I took care of that for you. Your wife should be reading my email right about now. I even included those lovely photos you sent Karen. I'm sure she'll find them useful in her divorce. I know I certainly will in mine." There was a beat of silence, then Mark erupted. "You son of a b**********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************̈̈ I laughed coldly. "Oh my, Mark. That sounds like a threat of serious physical harm. You might want to think about what you're saying." Karen squared her shoulders, trying to look in control. "We're going to implement some changes around here, and you're going to have to accept them. First, I've decided to take a lover. He's coming over tonight to be intimate with me. Your role will be limited to cleaning me up afterward and preparing him to go again once we're done. You'll also continue handling all the household chores and follow every instruction I give." She paused, clearly waiting for a reaction. I stayed quiet for a beat, then asked, "Is that all?" Her lips tightened. "No. There's more. I have a special gift for you that you'll start wearing immediately. You'll wear it all the time, and I'll be the only one with the key." Karen pushed a neatly wrapped box across the table toward me. "Go ahead. Open it." Inside the box was a chastity cage. I recognized it from the videos on her computer. I picked it up, holding it between my fingers, and asked, "Are you finished?" "Yes. I know this is a significant change, but you'll adapt. You'll follow my rules," she said, her voice starting to wobble. "Oh, and if you refuse, there will be consequences." I couldn't stop myself from chuckling softly. "Consequences? Let me guess, if I don't go along, you'll threaten me with divorce, take everything I've worked for, and leave me living in a shoebox. That about right?" Her confidence faltered slightly, and her voice softened. "Well, yes. So you'd better just comply." Still smiling, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. With a few taps, I sent a pre-written email to Mark's wife. Then I called Jessica. "Hey, honey," I said when she answered. "Mom just laid down the law. You're not going to believe this, she even handed me a chastity cage to wear." Karen's face turned pale, and she leaned forward, panicking. "Put the phone down. Who the hell are you talking to?" I ignored her, keeping my tone casual. "I'll let you go, sweetheart. Looks like I need to deal with something here." Placing the phone down on the table, I fixed Karen with a sharp glare and slammed my hand down, making the table rattle. "Never interrupt me when I'm talking to my daughter," I said firmly, my voice calm but cutting. Karen froze, stunned into silence. "Good," I continued. "Now that I have your attention, let's recap. If I understand you correctly, here's your grand plan: you're inviting some guy over tonight to sleep with you, and I'm supposed to watch and then serve as your loyal cuckold. Oh, and let's not forget this delightful gift." I held up the chastity cage. "You'll have the only key. And if I resist? You'll divorce me, take everything I've worked for, and leave me with nothing. Does that about sum it up?" Karen straightened slightly, trying to salvage her authority. "Yes, that's exactly how it's going to be." Calmly, I placed my briefcase on the table, opened it, and gestured toward her. "Karen, grab your phone and call Mark." Her composure cracked further. "What? Who's Mark?" Without a word, I grabbed her phone from the table, unlocked it using her passcode, and scrolled to Mark's contact. I pressed the call button and put it on speaker. Mark answered almost immediately, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Hey, baby. How did the wimp take it? Is he ready?" "Sorry, Mark," I said, my voice cold and deliberate. "This isn't baby. It's the wimp. I've got a couple of questions for you. First, when you started this little arrangement with my wife, did you bother telling her you're married with 2 small kids? Judging by her reaction, I'm guessing you didn't. Second, does your wife know you plan to spend tonight with mine? Based on your silence, I'll assume she doesn't." I let the weight of my words sink in before continuing. "No need to worry, though. I've taken care of that for you. Your wife should be reading my email right about now. And I made sure to include the pictures you so thoughtfully sent Karen. I'm sure she'll find them very useful in her divorce proceedings. I know I'll certainly be using them in mine." There was a brief silence before Mark's voice erupted in fury. "You son of a b*********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** leaned back, smirking. Oh my, Mark. That sounds like a serious threat of physical harm. You might want to think carefully about what you say next. Look at all this excitement you're causing, I muttered, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Karen sat across from me, sobbing and trying to apologize. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she pleaded, her face streaked with tears. She had been crying for over an hour when a loud pounding erupted at the front door. The banging was so forceful it shook the doorframe, and I had a pretty good idea who it was. Grabbing my .45 from the drawer, I cautiously approached. Before I could even peek through the peephole, a furious voice bellowed from the other side. "Open the door, you son of a b****************************** H. I backed away, pulling out my phone to dial 911. As the operator picked up, I spoke calmly but firmly. "Yes, I need police at my residence immediately. My wife's boyfriend is at my door threatening me. I don't know if he's armed, but I am. If he forces his way in, I'll defend myself." Leaving the phone connected and on the table, I called out, "Mark, get away from my door. The police are on their way." The pounding grew louder, the door shaking violently as Mark shouted, "I'm going to kill you." For a split second, I was tempted to unlock the door, let him break in, and put an end to this insanity once and for all. But before I could act on the thought, the sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder as they approached. "Show your hands and step away from the door," a commanding voice yelled from outside. Mark didn't comply, and moments later, I heard the crackle of a taser being deployed. It didn't take long to piece together what had happened. After receiving my email, Mark's wife had snapped and stormed over to her father's house, who, as luck would have it, lived next door. Her father was waiting when Mark showed up, and from the dents in Mark's car, it seemed he hadn't taken kindly to his son-in-law's behavior. Too bad the old man didn't stop Mark completely before he made it to my door, it might have saved him a trip to jail. Mark's arrest made it easy to secure a restraining order against him, though I doubted I'd need it until he got out. As for Karen, I gave her a simple ultimatum: move out, or I'd seek a restraining order against her too. She protested, saying no judge would grant one, but the threat was enough to push her into leaving. She packed her things and moved in with her parents, kicking and screaming the whole way. Even after moving out, Karen wouldn't stop trying to talk to me. She kept insisting she didn't want a divorce. When she finally hired a lawyer, he demanded a face-to-face meeting to discuss the divorce details. "Be ready," Mrs. Stone warned me. Karen's lawyer is a real scumbag, loud and aggressive, but not particularly sharp. Don't let him intimidate you. At the meeting, Karen's tone had changed entirely. She tried to act sweet and innocent, her voice soft and pleading. "Honey, this was all a big mistake," she said, blinking back tears. "I thought it would enhance our marriage. You have to believe me, Mark and I never had intimacy. I didn't cheat on you." I said nothing, staring at her with an expression as cold as steel. Her lawyer, a greasy-looking man with a smug grin, leaned forward. "Mr. Peterson, we're willing to move past all this nonsense. We'll even forgive you for making these baseless accusations against Mrs. Peterson. But if you insist on proceeding, we will countersue for defamation. You've tarnished her good name." I laughed, glancing at Mrs. Stone. "You said they'd try something like this." Without missing a beat, Mrs. Stone opened a folder and slid several photos across the table toward Karen and her lawyer. "Let's see if these are baseless allegations," Mrs. Stone said coolly. "This one shows you performing an intimate act. Is that not you? This one here, pretty clear it's you from behind. I'd recognize that mole on your butt anywhere. Oh, and this one, quite a pose, don't you think? Mark has quite the eye for photography. Did my soon-to-be ex-wife forget to mention that her so-called bull sent me these?" Karen's face turned a deep shade of red, and her lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I let the silence hang for a moment before leaning forward and locking eyes with Karen. "I'm not stopping the divorce," I said firmly. Her tears and excuses didn't faze me. The bridge had already burned, and there was no going back. You can fight all you want, Karen, but I'm done, I said, sliding another photo across the table to her lawyer. Here's a lovely shot of the cage she wanted me to wear. No, I won't forgive or forget. Karen's lawyer leaned closer to the photo, his expression darkening, while Karen's face turned beet red. The two began whispering furiously. It was clear Karen hadn't warned him about Mark's penchant for taking pictures. Their argument grew heated, and though I couldn't catch every word, I did hear Karen hiss, he said he had photos, but I didn't believe him. My eyes were closed, I wasn't even watching him while we were together. Mrs. Stone leaned toward me and suggested a break so the lawyers could consult with their clients. We both smirked as we stepped out of the room, exchanging knowing glances. When we returned, Karen's demeanor had shifted entirely. The sweet, innocent act was gone, replaced by something colder and more desperate. Her lawyer sat up straight, clearing his throat. "We are going to demand counseling," he announced, as if it were a trump card. I had expected this. Mrs. Stone had warned me they'd pull this move. "Sure," I said flatly. "I'll sit through as many sessions as you can throw at me. But don't think for a second it's going to change my mind." The lawyer leaned forward, flipping through a file. "In the event we can't convince you to reconcile after counseling, we need to discuss the division of assets. Your current demands are completely unacceptable." He slid a folder across the table, outlining their proposal. "For example, your demand for $500,000 for Mrs. Parker's business is absurd. We will require an independent evaluation of the company before discussing any figures." Karen, clearly rattled, added, "You know my business isn't worth that much. It's maybe half that, tops." She shot me a pleading look, but I didn't bite. Mrs. Stone didn't even flinch. With a grin, she opened her own folder and slid a stapled document across the table to Karen. "Mrs. Parker," she said smoothly, "I believe you'll recognize this as a loan application for your business. If you'll flip to the last page, you'll see your signature, right next to a statement that you signed under penalty of perjury. This application, which was notarized and mailed to the bank, declares the value of your business to be just over $1 million. Karen's face turned pale as she skimmed the document. "Based on this valuation," Mrs. Stone continued, "the bank issued you a loan. Now, if you're saying the value you provided wasn't accurate, that's troubling. You'd not only be admitting to perjury but also committing mail fraud. And as I'm sure your lawyer knows, the federal government takes mail fraud very seriously." I couldn't help but chuckle. "Well, Karen," I said with a smirk, "looks like you might be the one ending up in a cage after all." Karen's color drained completely as she turned to her lawyer, whispering furiously. He didn't look any happier, and after a few moments, he abruptly announced, "This meeting is over." A week later, I was surprised to find Karen standing on my doorstep. She looked like she'd been through hell, her hair was a mess, her eyes red and puffy, and she seemed like she hadn't slept in days. "Please, Michael," she begged. "We need to talk." I opened the door and gestured for her to come inside. "Didn't we already talk the night you tried to turn me into your wimp husband?" I asked, leading her to the same kitchen table where it all went down. "What do you want to talk about now, Karen?" She sank into a chair, her shoulders sagging. "I can't do this, Michael. I was stupid. I was wrong. I'm losing everything, my business, my family, my mind. Sarah won't talk to me. Every time I call, she says I'm a cheating woman and hangs up. My parents are furious. I heard my dad telling my mom he wanted me out of the house. And Mark's wife, she showed up at my parents' place, threatening to beat me up." "Sounds like you're getting exactly what you deserve," I replied, leaning back. "Isn't it exciting?" Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "You wouldn't really put me in jail, would you?" I shrugged. "Karen, it's not me who'll put you in jail. Your actions will. Funny, isn't it? You wanted to lock me in a cage, but now the key seems to be in someone else's hand. She sobbed quietly, and I let the silence linger, unmoved by her tears. There was no going back from what she had done.